Good afternoon, everyone. We've got more insights to provide you from the polls in which we released, asking people what were the key challenges for trainers or L&D specialists. It's quite a broad question. And myself, my name is Vinh, along with the Managing Director of the LX Group, Bally, Bhogal, are happy to talk this through. The four options that we gave you: a lack of training budget, which was 16% of you voted for that. However, 51% of you voted a lack of buy-in for training, but only 8% of you voted that the key challenge was developing learning content. And lastly, 25% of you voted that using technology to deliver training was the key challenge. Now, some clear results there. Obviously, a lack of buy-in for training being the most significant one. Bally, what are your thoughts on that? Does that come as a surprise to you? Is that something you foresaw? What are your thoughts?
Hi, Vin. Hope you're well. With regards to this specific poll, so what are the key challenges for trainers and learning development specialists? So people like ourselves, lack of buy-in for training did not surprise me at all that over 50% of the respondents said this. This has always been an issue within the training and development sector. I hate to say it will probably always remain there, whether it's in the forefront like the way it is today, or maybe slightly behind other issues. It will probably always be in the top 5. Now, obviously, we gave 4 options to our audiences, and this was one of them. And yeah, this has come out high. The learning and development sector still trying to convince their audiences, people within the business, managers, employees, all sorts of individuals within the organization that look, make time for training. Make time for training. Let's get you bought into training, and then everything that goes with it. Those are the key messages. So, what are we missing here? If we've got lack of buy-in, what are we missing? And we must be missing something. Either we haven't sold the value of training to our audiences, or there's too many other priorities and they conflict with what we're trying to sell as our training programs. And when I mean sell, I mean it loosely. Learning programs, are they structured? Are they short, sharp and snappy? Are they statutory training programs? What is it that have we done the training needs analysis on individuals thoroughly enough? So do we know what training individuals need, want? Can we foresee where the business is going? So we create training programs, either buy them in or create them ourselves, so it's aligned to the future of the business. Do our training interventions actually bring people on their personal and professional journey, as well as being linked into the objectives of the business? There's so many questions just in that one poll result that, that in itself kind of needs unpicking. But lack of buy-in for training, unfortunately and very sadly, it doesn't come as much of a surprise, I'm afraid, Vin.
I think that it's possible that the L&D specialists noted a lack of buy-in for training because possibly they don't make the final decision on that. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think it's a real tough one. HR, learning and development, training teams, whatever they're called, and whoever leads on training, it's really tough because basically what you're asking for is time. You're asking for people's time and attention away from the targets, away from operations, away from strategy, away from business development, away from, the conveyor belt, whatever it is that is their day job. Yeah, whatever it is that they're paid to do, whatever it is that they have to prioritize in that day, you're basically asking for their time and attention. And if you as educators, learning and development specialists, trainers, don't have something that is really going to capture the imagination, and it's urgent almost, especially nowadays with life and business being so fast paced, there needs to be that element of urgency and impact, immediate impact, as well as, I say immediate impact, but it could be medium, short term, medium, possibly even long term. But I think where you want to try and capture people's time, their attention, then, you need to have a very, very convincing story, very convincing story to tell, as in, this is our program, this is what we're going to do, this is why we're doing it, this is how it's related to the business, this is what you're going to get out of it as individuals, this is how you're going to develop as individuals, this is how the business develops. We all win. we're all winners in this. And I don't know if all of our training and learning and development specialists and our community of practitioners are at that point, because L&D, training, development, whatever you want to call it, has always taken almost, third, second, second or third, sometimes even a fourth, fifth position, if you like, relative to departments or elements such as strategy, marketing, operations, finance. We've always had to take the kind of back seat. We have to be the ones that have to convince. We have to do a lot more convincing than our counterparts within the businesses that we potentially work in, corporate organizations, apprenticeship training providers, even our clients that we work with as training organizations. We have to do a lot more convincing that if you give us the time, because that's what we're trading, you give us the time and we'll have an impact on you and your business. That's where the struggle is, I believe. And I think that's where we need to do some more work.
Makes perfect sense, considering when you compare L&D to other departments within an organization. You mentioned marketing as an example. Yes, absolutely. Marketing has always secured more of a budget, let's say, than L&D, which is very unfortunate, because for a while now, the data has been out there for the L&D community to look at and to understand and see why L&D is so important, why it is worth investing in. And as you can see from the results, 51% of the votes voted that, this is an issue. Like you say, it's not a surprise. It is a continuing issue, but the viable solution to this, in parts, does already exist. As we all understand, any leaders within an organization, they look at the numbers, they look at the data, they want the insights to make better, data-driven, informed decisions. It's there. And if it's not there, it can be obtained. It is obtainable from any organization, which actually leads me onto the other result, using technology. Most organizations believe technology is an investment, but to be honest with you, in my opinion, a lot of people believe that technology is more expensive than it actually is. Now, of course, the big topic of conversation nowadays is AI. So do you think AI will change that statistic at all? 25% voted that using technology to deliver training is a key challenge. Do you think that's in the case of the actual medium that they use, such as being remote or in person or anything of the sort? Do you think AI is going to impact that stat at all, do you think, Bally?
There's a couple of things in there. So when we look at this poll question, what are the key challenges for trainers or learning development specialists? And the answer is using technology to deliver training. That's 25%. A quarter of the respondents have said that this is a problem. In the first instance, and I think this is potentially where we're at, is it's actually using platforms. So it could be software systems, for example, all the ones that we've had to use in during the pandemic. A lot of trainers have had to learn this business of delivering training online. So how do I use whiteboards? How do I use breakouts? How do I use polls? How do I make training that I deliver using technology? How do I make it interactive? So there's been a lot of step up that's had to go on there, because we simply just were not there before the pandemic. So that, I think, still continues to be not an issue as such, but still a challenge, in as much as people can always develop, they can always get better at how they use technology to deliver training, so that it has even more impact. Okay, so there's that first element. I think what you're talking about, Vin, is just way out ahead. We're talking probably, the next 3 to 5 years time. And if you asked me today, and I'm sure I'll get a little bit of challenge around what I'm about to say as well, I don't think we're there. As a learning development, as a trainer, community, educator community, even if you look at teachers in schools or trainers, apprenticeship staff, probably even corporate trainers, some of them. That's not to say that some of the organizations that are just way out ahead of the, out of the blocks compared to everybody else aren't using AI. And we've certainly got learning platform providers that are really looking into this in detail in terms of how can they make their platforms perform better using AI? How can they provide us with the solutions via AI? But I have to say, as trainers, as the learning and development specialists, I think we're still at the point where we're still trying to master how to improve the use of technology, just using technology in delivering everyday training and getting our audiences, our learners, to interact with that technology. I personally think we're there. So I think even though it's low, I mean, it's quarter of there's a quarter response here. So a quarter of our respondents are saying this. I think it's relative to that. If you were to start talking about Vinh, that's a different that's a different podcast. And I think, I'd probably have to interview you in that case, because I think we're talking a few years ahead.
I do like my technology, it's true. I do think that well, first of all, I 100% agree with you. Unfortunately, in L&D, technology is a significant barrier. It's a key challenge here, in other words. I think those who are smarter would look into investing in the best technology and upskilling learners, in not just the learners, but also those who deliver training, to using the resources at hand as best as possible, because the benefits are exponential. So it could save time, it could save money, it could increase learner count, it can increase learner satisfaction, and it just makes things more convenient, which is the aim. However, we do have to balance that out with how receptive the learners would be in having training delivered to them in certain forms of media. Great example of that would be delivering training in person as opposed to online. There's always a debate. It's not a significant debate because many people still believe that training in person is far more effective than training online. However, people do need to change their mindsets, I think. People do need to understand that delivering training online does have huge benefits, and you can learn just as effectively online, whether it be through online learning modules or even through a webinar. These can be extremely useful and helpful. In the world that we live in today, post-pandemic, it is definitely, for many organizations, the method of choice to deliver training. So I think, in my opinion, and Bally, I'm not sure if you agree with this, people do need to be more receptive to more digital means of delivering training. Would you say that's the case, or would you say there's more to it, do you think?
Yeah, I think certainly where the trainers have mastered their skills and honed in their skills on delivery online, so just online training delivery skills, and perfected them, or just they had to learn this business, learn the ropes through the pandemic, following the pandemic, then what I see now is just the use of those skills and the use of those methods as part of a blended learning approach. So there's some face-to-face, there's a mixture of face-to-face, there's a mixture of online training, there's a mixture of workshops, classroom delivery, sort of, observations on site, being out actually doing the job and watching the individual do the job. So there's all sorts of blended approaches taking place, which I think are really useful to get us, a good 360-degree sort of feedback around how an individual is developing, or how a cohort is developing. So I think that is going really well, and I think we've done that. I think we're definitely there on that point, the blended. So using technology as a mixture, as part of a blended approach, we're definitely there. Where I think we've got to learn a lot more is this whole use of AI, and where is it taking us? What does it mean? What does the use of AI within the training and development sector, what does that mean for us as practitioners? Will we lose jobs as a result of it because this will eventually take over? I don't know. I don't think so. I think we'll always need trainers. I think we'll always need that face-to-face element. We'll always need that human input. I don't think everything can become robotic and bot-driven, is my personal opinion. But certainly when you look at sort of data, analytics, satisfaction, usage, retention, then I think we can use technology as part of that. I don't think we use it enough to monitor how well learning interventions have actually landed with the learner and where we can improve, if you like. So I think we're still a bit behind in terms of how we quality assure the training that we deliver, and also how we learn from any data and statistic of that delivery and then improve it for next time. There's a lot of that happening in apprenticeships and also in corporate worlds, but I think, you know, we still sort of scratch at the surface of that iceberg, tip of the iceberg. We just really haven't got to greater depths on that note.
And two things in particular which really stood out and I think are particularly important: the fact that people are employing blended learning more, because as you say, we are human beings, we're not robots, and we don't want to be trained by robots. But also how that links to AI, I think using AI is fine, but it does require some thought. We can't overuse it or abuse it. We do have to retain that human aspect when it comes to training people. So the fact that it's a blended learning approach, I think, is a compromise. People understand to an extent the benefits of online learning, but they still want to retain that human aspect of learning as well. Thank you, Bally. Now, just a quick note on the other two options to vote for, which are far less, and this actually links to our previous poll. We mentioned the lack of training budget, which only 16% of you voted for, and developing learning content, which isn't nearly so much of an issue as the others, which at 8%. Just a quick question, Bally, do you see that as a surprise at all?
There's so much content out there now, Vin, so I'm not surprised that only 8% find this an issue. You can find all sorts of statutory training out there, you know, developed off-the-shelf content that you can take. I mean, there's just a plethora of options out there, so that doesn't come as any shock. I think the 8% that probably have said that this is a key challenge could be, and this is just my guess, can't be certain without speaking to the individuals that have actually responded to this poll, but I just wonder if those 8% are thinking it's just developing those skills of actually developing the learning content here ourselves. How do we develop it? Where do we start? It's maybe very specific to our organization. I don't know, for example, it could be, you know, how to make a machine, and you know, there might be a certain procedure in there and they have to make a learning asset just around that. Where do we start with that? Do we use a certain software package, for example? How do we set out the little learning program, and all the rest of it? So it just could be that. So it just could be about the skills of that individual. As far as content's concerned, there's no shortage of content out there. And lack of training budget, as we've seen, this is becoming far less of an issue. What used to be the case previously, and certainly what we've seen during sort of times of recessions and challenging financial times, I don't see this as a bit of a, you know, much of an issue, lack of training budgets. It's more of a case of, I think our clients have become a lot more sophisticated in what they're looking for. So when they're buying in training from even consultants as ourselves, advisors as ourselves, they're really looking for that to become and be impactful, the training intervention, which is right up our street anyway. We want to be able to demonstrate in the training that we provide, just as LXG here, that actually if we come in and do some training for you, we can have an impact straight away. But that's equally what we want you to do. And we want L&D trainers and specialists to have the same confidence in themselves and their abilities, that if they put together a program, it's only going to be good for the business, only going to be good for the individuals. And this is how they have to be able to be very, very categoric in, like I said, that kind of trade-off between, if I'm having your time, if you're going to give me 1 hour of your time, then this is what I'm giving you back. This is what you're going to have as a takeaway.
Perfect to me. And yes, definitely. Now the LX Group are more than happy to assist any organization with that and provide the information, the tools and resources that they need to address those issues. Most notably, as I mentioned in the beginning, the lack of buy-in for training. Do you see those stats remaining as such, or do you think they're going to change in the future? Bally, how are we going to address the lack of buy-in for training? How can LXG assist with that? Is that going to change, or is that always going to be the case? Because when I mention a lack of training budget as less of a challenge, I think that does tie into the other aspects, such as technology, for example. Technology can be cheaper, but there's pros and cons to both in-person and digital means of training people. So is there anything in particular, Bally, that you would support clients in, or anyone else within L&D to support them in relation to these results at all?
I think, yeah, again, going back to lack of buy-in, it is, I mean, there's two types of individuals. I don't know, is there two types of individuals? The ones that are really into learning development and just always hungry for growth and just curious, yeah, just curious. And then there might be the other types of individuals who perhaps don't see the value in learning and developing, and just the curiosity, perhaps just it's just not in their DNA, for example, if I can put it in that way. And I think it's very much down to organizations and what their ultimately what their culture is like. We see a lot of organizations that are just so into learning and development, and they have every program going and they mandate training, but they're few and far between. But then equally, you can see that those organizations, they just have a different energy. You know, it's in their culture. You can tell, and when you speak to anybody in those organizations, there is feel that there's a buzz, there's an energy that these guys are hungry to know more, to do more, to be even more efficient, and to squeeze out, you know, even more juice from whatever resources they have for the betterment of themselves and the business. So, you know, if it is that kind of, you know, for us, it's about culture, you know, and if we can help to put on any kind of training that helps to change that mindset, if you like, and that culture, then yeah, absolutely, we're in. That's, you know, certainly something that we feel we can help, because we're so into learning and development. We're always talking about it as parents as well as educators, as practitioners in everything that we do. You know, we eat, live, breathe learning, development, that curiosity, and that just that drive to always do better, be better in ourselves. And I think you can't teach that. You can somehow demonstrate it, but you'd have to position that and say, look, you know, this really needs to be considered in the overall scheme of things. Where are you on this scale? Where are your mindsets? And let's see if we can move the needle. So that would be right up our streets. When it comes to use of technology, people can do all sorts of training courses to help them improve on their use of technology. Where we want to be as ourselves as a business, and also working with clients, with other trainers, educators, organizations, practices, is, you know, how are you using technology? Are you using technology to its full potential? How about learning, analytics, data, all of those impacts that you can get, immediate, sort of short-term, medium, long-term impacts? Are you looking at all of this? How are you, what's your perspective on learning and development? How do you position learning and development within your business? And I think there's a, I hate to say it, but, you know, there's a conversational workshop in there around all of this, in terms of, you know, what is the position of learning and development with you in your business? Because if it's at the bottom of the pile, then this statistic of 51 is only going to get worse. Lack of buy-in for training. However, if there is the desire to really put sort of learning development, let's try it, let's trial, let's see what happens, in as much as let's give it a really good stab, let's try and change our mindsets on this. We've previously potentially overlooked it as a way, as a methodology of improving ourselves as individuals and the business. If there's the desire to explore more, then that's where I think businesses need to be, because otherwise these statistics won't change. You know, lack of buy-in, and just unfortunately training, education being almost, you know, the third-class citizen sometimes within business. It's always going to remain like this, and we know that it's been like that for years, and there's no reason why it wouldn't change in the future. I think people need to change it. Generation, there'll be changes with generations as well.
Hopefully, when things move forward, that people will learn to understand more the value of learning, because as yourself, a specialist in the field, you love learning, and which is why you're able to support others and assist others, not just as yourself or part of LXG, to tap into that love of learning that others have too. I fully agree with you. I think that is a major component of the lack of buy-in for training. People just need to understand its value. People need to love the subject more. It's not just all about delivering it to others. Others have to love it as well. Just have some passion for what you do. Have some passion for the community and the sector that we're in. And we're all going to move forward together. Not to sound too profound about it. Bally, thank you for your insights on that. That's been very helpful. And thank you to all the listeners as well. Hopefully you found great insights on that. Let us know. Contact Bally or the LX Group if you'd like to talk to us more about any of this. Thank you.